In this video I wanted to talk about the knapsack of the 17th century, sometimes also called a sausage bag or sausage roll bag. These bags can be found on most 17th century reenactment events, and I thought it would be interesting to see what information I could actually find about them and show you how to make one. The English word knapsack derives from the Dutch knapsack, knap or knappen meaning to bite, catch or eat, and zak meaning sack. This root does suggest that the knapsack is a food or ration bag. In Dutch the word knapsack goes back to at least 1552, and it's first seen in England by about 1600, and the word snapsack with an S appears in about the middle of the 17th century. In modern Dutch the word knapzak almost always means a bundle tied on the end of a stick and carried on the shoulder. We also see this method in the 16th century. In the modern day, some people call this way of carry the hobo style. It's hard to determine where and when this style of bag originated, if the word developed with the bag or if the bag developed with the word. When referring to the knapsack, I'm talking about a tube-shaped bag that's either worn diagonally across the back or under the armpit. Some say that the English brought these bags to mainland Europe, others say the English got them from the Dutch, but this is all speculaas. Apart from pictorial sources, there isn't much known about these bags in Dutch sources. There are though three archaeological finds of these bags that have been found in a shipwreck in the Zuiderzee. They're all made of leather and they all seem to have been constructed slightly differently. Up till now I haven't seen any evidence of this particular style of bag before 1600. Apart from this image from the first half of the 16th century. It's really unclear what type of bag this actually is, but it's possible that it could be one of these bags. With all the developments going on in the Dutch army, this could have been one of those developments. But once again, this is speculaas. They are sometimes depicted with civilians, but seem to have been more popular in the military. And even then, they don't seem to have been standard equipment, since sometimes you'll see most of a company march with these bags, and other times you'll see just a few or none. Some say the soldiers would be issued these bags if they had to march for multiple days without being able to set up camp, but I couldn't find any sources that actually mention this, so once again this is speculaas. According to the images, these bags could vary in size, from larger examples that are worn on the back to smaller examples that are worn under the armpit. And I found only one image of a knapsack with a round bottom. You'll sometimes see knapsacks of reenactors with a round bottom, but I haven't found much proof for this apart from this image. And the straps could be attached in multiple different ways. Some as just a loose strap, and others as straps as part of the closure. There are English contracts for leather merchants from 1645. One for an order of 11,200 leather knapsacks, and another one the same year. Another one in the same year for 22,400 knapsacks. I've only found one reference to canvas knapsacks of British soldiers that were going to be deployed in Ireland. But apart from that, all the mentions of knapsacks that I could find were all made of leather, some even with the hair on the outside, probably for the same reason that the trump cap is made like this. We've already made a video about that, and that's to help with water drainage, so that the water drains down the hairs instead of that it soaks into the leather bag. And that's all the information I could find about the 17th century knapsack. And because it's an easy project and I think almost anyone can make it, like even I made it, so I think you can too, I'm going to show you how to make a very simple, small 17th century knapsack. As you can see, this is my old knapsack. The strap and closure are separate. And in the new one, the strap enclosure will be made of the same piece, inspired by this original knapsack. I recommend making them out of goat's leather, since it's relatively thin and flexible, but also strong, and it's relatively easy to sew by hand. And when you use a large goat hide, like I did on my old knapsack, you get relatively close to the dimensions of the archaeological finds. But this time I'm making a smaller version that historically was often worn under the armpit. And for this project you're going to need a goat hide, some linen thread, but you can also use other materials, beeswax to wax your thread, scissors to cut your thread. If you have trouble getting your needle through the leather, you can use an awl, a needle. I'm using a long, sharp embroidery needle, since I find it's easier to sew with longer needles. A thimble or something else to push the needle through the leather. I'm using a scrap bit of thick leather for this purpose. A strip of leather or a leather cord to make the strap and closure. A ruler and pencil to draw up your pattern on the leather. A hobby knife and cutting mat to cut out the pattern. A hole punch to cut out the holes for the strap and closure. And lastly, small office or document clips. Since you can't pin your leather together, these really help during the sewing process, as you'll see later. First off, flip over your leather, so we can draw on the other side. Just a straight line at the bottom and the top. And then you can choose to either make straight lines from the bottom to the top, or to follow the curvature of the sheepskin. I'm choosing to go for the straight line, since it's a bit easier to match up straight lines compared to curved lines. And then we're going to cut out the rectangle we drew on the sheepskin. Now, when cutting leather with fur on it, always cut on the leather side, and have the blade on its smallest setting. So you cut as less hair as possible. But in the end, it doesn't really matter how careful you're being. You're always going to cut some hairs. So you better get used to that idea. Then we have a relatively square piece of goat hide, folded over with the hair on the inside. And then we're going to sew up the long side. As you can see here, I've clipped the material together with the office clips. And I'm pricking a small hole with the awl, and I'm following through with the needle. And I'm using a back stitch, so every time I'm going back through the previous hole before going through the next. And when you reach the office clips, you just have to move them along the project. And when that's done, you can make your holes for the closure. You can do this with an awl or hole punch, or even a knife or chisel. Always make sure to count and keep count of the holes you have and need. And when you've made the holes, you can flip the whole thing with the outside to the outside again. And then it's time to make our closure and our strap. I'm just using a basic leather thong. Just pull it through the holes. And just use the strap to tie it closed at the bottom. Basically now it's finished. But I wasn't really happy with the result, especially the strap. So I decided to add some extra length to the strap, which made it more comfortable to wear, and I've also added a small piece of leather onto the strap to make sure that it stays closed a little bit better. And that's it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Also, please let me know if you've ever made one of these bags, or if you're ever planning on making one of these bags. And I'll see you in the next video.